What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode, the third episode of Will's Football Onslaught podcast. The podcast where we break down the biggest, boldest, and most explosive stories in the Premier League and more in the rest of Europe as well. There's no holding back here. We just got sharp opinions and some honest takes to go along with them as well. And this week has been absolutely insane already. At the time of recording, we've now wrapped up all of the Champions League games so far this week. And for those of you that love Champions League football like me, you've had to wait quite the longest time. It's not just been the months of June, July, and half of September. It's just felt like double the time. And we've got some big nights for at least a few of the English clubs that competed in the tournament. Nothing really had any hands on the unforgettable 4-4 thriller in Turin between Juventus and Dortmund. We also had Alexander Isak finally making his long-awaited debut for Liverpool as well. And if that wasn't enough drama for you, Jose Mourinho is set to sensationally return to the very first club that he started his legendary managerial career. He's coming back to Benfica almost 25 years to the week that he first got the job back in 2000. Now, let's not forget there's going to be some controversy here as well, as we often see does surround Jose Mourinho. He is often in the headlines for something. He's got a huge legacy at the arch rivals, Porto, winning the UEFA Cup and the Champions League back-to-back back in the day. But we'll get much more further into how that's going to line up and what the impact on that's going to be later on in the episode. We've got all of that and more. We've got plenty of opinions here, debates, takeaways lined up for you today. So grab a cold or hot drink of your choice. I'm not going to try and sway you too much on that. Make sure you get comfortable, strap in, because we're about to get straight into it. Now, let's dive into the biggest football headlines from this past week, starting with the Champions League madness that we watched unfold. There's no better place to kick off than with the stories that are dominating Europe this week. So let's just hit the roundup. So now we're going to go fully into how the English clubs had done in the Champions League this past week. And I suppose we should start off with the team that I felt like arguably had the best performance of any of the English teams. And I think that's just Manchester City, going up against the Italian champions in Napoli. But that was not the big headline of the day. It was Kevin De Bruyne, one of the all-time great Manchester City players who had just left the club for free in the summer, sensationally getting a very quick return to the Etihad Stadium. But that one was cut short for him. Again, we're going to dive deeper into that a bit later. But it was a sensational win for Manchester City because I feel like with Jeremy Doku's chance that he had to really get that sort of left wing, right wing, I'll be honest, either position nailed down for him. I feel like he's been making a strong case for that recently. He had an awesome performance in the Manchester derby not too long ago, just this past weekend. And he followed up with another brilliant performance again against Napoli. And he got a great goal in that one. It was a sensational solo effort. But he scored the second goal in that game, just getting through a few players before unleashing a brilliant shot past Vanja Milinkovic-Savic in goal. But it was Erling Haaland that got Manchester City going not too long before Jeremy Doku managed to get on the score sheet. Brilliant header from him, really deft, great centre-forward play. As you can say about almost all of the goals that Erling Haaland scores, he's such a brilliant finisher within the box. Sensational header from him. I thought it was a really smart header, dinked it over the keeper. Just about had that enough power that it drops over underneath the bar instead. And I felt like that was great. But in the first half, Napoli were up against it. And that was because of a last-man tackle that Giovanni Di Lorenzo had on Erling Haaland when he was through on goal. He was the last man back. And I do think the referee had little to no choice but to be able to send off Giovanni Di Lorenzo. Honestly, there was nothing he could have done to keep him on the pitch. And that indirectly meant that Kevin De Bruyne's dream return to the Etihad Stadium was cut short because Antonio Conte had to switch him out with a bit of a tactical mix-up. It wasn't any way that Napoli were going to be able to play the exact same way they were playing if they had 10 men, especially against a team that is as strong as Manchester City and you're away from home as well. They had to do it, but I do think it was a bit unlucky to sub off a player of Kevin De Bruyne's class, because if he's going to help you win the game, or if your ambition is to try and win the game at the Etihad Stadium, I think Kevin De Bruyne helps make that possible. But really unlucky, and as it is, I just think maybe the victory went in the way of the favourites. I think Manchester City at home, despite what we've seen of them last season, they should be making easy work of most teams that faced them in the Champions League at home. Even a team as strong as a team that could win the Serie A title last season. Now, Arsenal beating Athletic Bilbao away from home. A bit of a dire game to watch. I'm just going to be honest with you. It was one of the earlier kickoffs on the first day that Champions League football had returned. And I'll be honest, I didn't love what I saw in terms of the attacking aspect of the game. But defensively, you have to hold your hands up and give it to Mikel Arteta. He is brilliant at setting up his team defensively. And in that respect, give him some more credit as well. The lineup they put out there probably wasn't the absolute best one, but a lot of the time, I don't like to get into, if a manager fielded the right lineup ahead of the game or things like that, because you only know what's really working until you play the game. I don't think it's really ever going to be the case that a manager gets a lineup perfect because he knew absolutely the exact tactics and the exact way that the opposition were going to line up on the day. So I'm not here to criticize that. I will give some credit for the substitutions. Gabriel Martinelli coming on, Leandro Trossard also coming on, and both of them combined to get the goals in the game. And Martinelli getting that first one barely any seconds, just seconds after he'd been on the pitch, replacing Eze, managed to get on. That's a player who had been taking his spot in the starting lineup recently. What did he do? There's a ball dinked over the top on the halfway line. He's there racing for it, being physical. Had a bit of a strange first touch, didn't quite go the way he wanted, but the second touch was sensational to just keep the ball in play whilst he's still got his body aligned to just keep driving forward. Finishes the chance very well. Very good goal from Gabriel Martinelli. He needed that goal. His performances recently have not been inspiring. Then you got Leandro Trossard being clinical. Takes a little bit of a deflection, if I'm not mistaken, there. So it was a bit fortunate in the way that it went past the goalkeeper. But if you can get the shot on target and it's powerful enough, it's a goal. And I would say the question that leaves me with this Arsenal game is, does it show that sign of maturity, or is it exposing some of the same weaknesses that we saw in the team last season with their ability to create chances from open play? Well, they did manage to get a chance with Martinelli, but you could argue it was much more of a chance that Martinelli made for himself rather than an actual chance on goal. And I do feel like actually probably less about the weaknesses in Arsenal's team, but more about the strength and the maturity that this team has now been able to be able to grind out victories in Europe. That was something a few years ago, whether it was Europa League or Champions League. Arsenal would trip up sometimes in some of these away games, but not of the current Arsenal team with the caliber of squad they have now. Now, Liverpool, probably the most dramatic game of the night, not just amongst English teams, but across quite a few of the teams that managed to play during the Wednesday round of games. A 3-2 win over Atletico Madrid, another Spanish team, but this time they were hosting at Anfield. It was an initial dream start with 2 goals in the opening 6 minutes. Mo Salah became the first ever player to score an assist within the first 6 minutes of the game. So that was the quickest anybody has ever reached that feat before. And he was on form. The way he was playing, the way he was moving just in that opening 15, 20 minutes, I just thought, okay, we're going to get a Mo Salah masterclass. And to be honest with you, he did play well, particularly in that first half, but as did a number of Liverpool players. I felt like they were all over Atletico Madrid. They did have their time, Atletico, with the ball, moving it around. Liverpool had to be a bit more compact, but I felt like for the longest time, it just looked like Liverpool were going to win. You had a Mo Salah free kick, bounces off of Andy Robertson's leg. He knew nothing about that. No way he'll be able to say he meant to do it. But just wrongs foot, Jan Oblak in goal, and then Liverpool were ahead within the opening 2 minutes of the game. Then a few minutes later, a brilliant bit of play from Mo Salah and Ryan Gravenberch, who's been impressing me so much with the way that he's been playing to start the season. Brilliant link-up play, really quick. Mo Salah, just that trademark strength that he has in not even just 1v1s, but sometimes 2v1s. And in this case, it was a 3v1. Just managing to go in between a little gap, get onto the ball, low-driven finish past Jan Oblak. It was a brilliant finish from him. And I'll be honest with you, I'll look at this game and say to myself, Liverpool should have won very comfortably. It was looking like Liverpool's best performance of the season so far. But as we've seen with Liverpool, they don't do anything the easy way. They've had a bunch of 2-0 leads already this season. We've seen in the Community Shield against Crystal Palace. We've seen in the opening day game against Bournemouth going 2 goals up. We've even seen now just against Atletico Madrid. And even before that one, Newcastle United as well. 2-0 up in that game too. It looked like they were in cruise control in a bunch of games, but then they always let the 2-goal lead slip. It was ridiculous. I just didn't understand it. And if we're being really honest here, Atletico Madrid, I don't know if they really deserve to go back into the game, but in those chances, you look at the way Atletico Madrid got their goals. Just on the stroke of half-time, Marcos Llorente yet again coming back to cause Liverpool fans heart problems, gets another goal at Anfield. as he had done famously, scoring a brace in the knockout round game where Atletico Madrid got the better of Liverpool in a comeback win in 2020. He scored in this game, which I think that goal should have been ruled out. Antoine Griezmann there, I don't think he's absolutely blocking the line of vision for Alisson, but I'll be honest, where he is standing in an offside position, I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure how the referee did not cancel that goal. I've seen those goals easily taken away for the exact same reason, but referee allowed it to stand. I think he just judged that Alisson wasn't going to be able to get there regardless of where Griezmann was standing. And then later on in the second half, just in the final 10 minutes, banger, absolute banger from Marcos Llorente. Ball deflects out of nowhere from a Aleti shot, and then it just fell perfectly to him, flew over Alisson into the back of the net. It was a screamer, and I think in football, you get your chances, you have to take them. Atletico Madrid did, but Virgil van Dijk stepped up in stoppage time, yet another stoppage time winner for Liverpool, scoring the goal in the 92nd minute from a corner. Yet another set piece that helps Liverpool get 3 points as well. And yeah, they've opened their Champions League campaign with a win at Anfield. But we did get to see Alexander Isak start again for the first time for Liverpool. I'll get more into that later on in this episode. And for Liverpool, it's the 5th time this season that they've scored a go-ahead goal or a winning goal in the 80th minute of the game or later. And they've only played 6 games all season. It's ridiculous. Chelsea lost to Bayern Munich 3-1. Individual mistakes did cost them in this game. You had a Trevor Chalobah on goal from an Elise cross. Then a poor foul from Moises Caicedo on to give Harry Kane a penalty that he expertly dispatched. Harry Kane rarely misses them. So once you saw that, you thought, okay, Bayern 2-0 up at home this quickly in the game. It's going to be a long day for Chelsea. And then if that wasn't bad enough, Cole Palmer did get them back into the game with a really nice finish to make it 2-1 just before halftime. But then Chelsea loses momentum again. Just a really strange mix-up between the defenders. Gusto, heavy touch, gives the ball into Harry Kane. I wouldn't even say that's a great chance for most strikers. But for somebody with the ability of Harry Kane to turn that quickly, get a brilliant, low, accurate, powerful shot off on goal, wow. You just got to give him the credit. Bayern Munich, just because of those defensive errors alone, they deserved the win. But Chelsea didn't even play badly, just really bad individual mistakes cost them the game. And lastly, we had Newcastle losing at St. James's Park 2-0 to Barcelona. And it was the Marcus Rashford show. The first half in particular wasn't really much going on, but in that second half, Rashford came to life. Brilliant header from a Koundé cross. One of the best right backs in the world, in my opinion, right now. That was an excellent cross from Koundé on his left foot, in-swinger. Rashford, not the type of header you would have expected from him as well. It's proper number 9's header. Stood firm, got the power, directing it into the bottom corner. Brilliant goal from him. But it was the second goal that really took the cake. Just evading a bunch of Newcastle players, just getting past Sandro Tonali, just kept cutting out to the right, kept wondering if he was going to lay the ball off. But instead, with complete total range of motion, just swings his right boot at it, crashes that off the top of the crossbar and in. And it was a sensational one. Nick Pope wasn't getting anywhere near it. And guess who was in attendance in that one? England manager Thomas Tuchel. Call me a crazy person, but it was not a coincidence that Marcus Rashford was in top form to score his first Barcelona goals since joining on loan. Now, the global show-stopping game, in my opinion, this was by far the best game of the whole season. And Juventus were in a great game quite recently with Inter Milan, just winning the Derby d'Italia 4-3 with a stoppage time winning goal not even that long ago. And now they've just been in another brilliant game in their home stadium involving Borussia Dortmund. This game somehow was 0-0 at halftime, by the way. There wasn't any goal scored as of yet. And then all of a sudden, you just find the goals galore flying in. So it was Borussia Dortmund that initially started well. Karim Adeyemi, I think, scored a really, really nice, clean finish. Brilliant, low, powerful shot. Got past the keeper quite easily. Kenan Yildiz, my opinion, quickly becoming the best player at Juventus and becoming the star man. I think the manager Igor Tudor is really trusting him to just have free range and go out and impress himself, impress the fans and express himself. And then you've got him just curling in a beautiful shot into the top bins outside the box as well. And then there was more long-range bangers coming out. Phyllis and Mecha just scoring a brilliant goal from outside the box. Really technically gifted, accurate effort, but somehow summoned so much power to give Dortmund back the lead. Then you had Jan Couto. I don't know how he even managed to get this shot off into the far near corner. Keeper should have done a lot better with it, but to me, very good finish regardless. And then you had Dusan Vlahovic, clean finish through on goal, getting the team back into it. Then Borussia Dortmund get a penalty, some really lousy defending from Juventus. And there was a really weird moment there as well with Bensebaini and Sergio Guirassy arguing with each other about who should be taking the penalty. I'm not a fan of the number 9 not taking the penalty if they are the designated penalty taker on the team. If you have somebody else who plays wherever they may play, who's usually the penalty taker, fine. But the number 9 is usually the one who takes the penalties. They should always be taking it. And I didn't quite like the way Bensebaini went about that. But I think it was his birthday, if I'm not mistaken. It was a really nice personal significant milestone for him. So just wanted the goal or the chance to be able to get a goal. And Guirassy did not look very happy to have to let Bensebaini take that penalty. But he did take it well, made it 4-2 to Dortmund. And it looked like from there, Dortmund were just going to get a really big away win from home. Dusan Vlahovic had other ideas, though. He's been a bit out of favour with Juve in this recent past year. You know, he's not really had a successful time at Juventus since joining quite a few years ago now. But he went and took control in this game, scored a really nice finish in with barely 3 minutes of the game to go. Dortmund still having a 2-goal lead. Really nice finish for him. Then in the final minute of the game, Vlahovic turned provider, crossing in a beautiful cross into former Newcastle outcast Lloyd Kelly, of all people, to pop up right in front of goal and head home an equaliser in the dying seconds of the game. Absolutely unreal. I was so lucky that I was able to get my eyes on that fixture as well. That's usually a game I wouldn't even particularly have chosen to have watched, honestly, on the night. But I was so lucky that I did manage to watch it. And for me, the best game I've seen all season, and probably the best game you would have been able to find around anywhere in Europe's top leagues. If you disagree with me, please take this opportunity to get into the comment section. Let me know how you feel. What was the best Champions League game this week? And I'll take this opportunity to ask anyone who's listening on any audio-only platforms, please give me a 5-star. Please share with friends as well. But if I have not earned a 5-star rating from you just yet, I won't hold it against you. I'm going to try and get that 5 stars out of you. And if you're listening or watching anywhere else on YouTube, on any other platform, please hit the like button as well. Share with your friends. Share with anybody that loves football. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're new here, why don't you hit that subscribe button as well? Try it. It won't hurt. Won't hurt. I'm just saying. Would really appreciate it. Now, moving on to the next game that I felt like was really, really big in terms of the amount of eyes that was on it. You had Real Madrid beating Marseille 2-1. Timothy Weah, the son of former and only ever African Ballon d'Or winner in history, George Weah, he scored a big goal for Marseille. I think right now he's currently on a loan, I think with a possible option to buy from Juventus. Scored a really good goal for Marseille. I thought Marseille deserved it the way they were playing. They got that goal. Maybe it was a surprise to most neutrals, them taking the lead, but I felt like Marseille, they've put together a decent team. And yeah, I got to be honest, they did deserve that lead. Real Madrid, though, they did manage to get 2 penalties in this game. The second one being much more contentious than the first. Kylian Mbappe, he's got a great record against Marseille as a PSG player, scoring a brace, 2 penalties in that game, and now has become the quickest player to score 50 goals for Real Madrid since the man Cristiano Ronaldo himself. Unbelievable that Kylian Mbappe already has 50 goals for Real Madrid. He barely joined them a bit under 14 months ago, and he's already got 50 goals as a Real Madrid player. And I'm going to have to call out some people. I remember on social media, the amount of people that were trying to say Real Madrid flopped by signing Kylian Mbappe, the amount of people that tried to blame the trophyless season on him, saying, oh, they were better off without him. We're going to have to see, because right now, Kylian Mbappe is looking like he's starting the season with the Ballon d'Or in his eyes. He's one of the best players in the world this past year, and for sure, he's been in amongst the best players with the best form to start this new season. So he did score his 2 goals, a late one, which I just have to be honest, I'm going to say how it is. I don't know how the referee gave that penalty right at the end for a handball. I think that was super unlucky. It was a decent challenge on Vinny Jr., so it wasn't given as a foul, but just the ball being on the ground and the player's hand just moving into the ball as he was sliding. I think he's really, really unlucky. If that was given against my team that I support, I would have been fuming. So I didn't think that should have been a penalty, but it was given. Kylian Mbappe stepped up in the crucial moment of the game to win it for Real Madrid. Give him his flowers. He stepped up and did his thing. Now you've got Eintracht Frankfurt 5-1 against Galatasaray. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what happened in this game. This one was a really, really strange one to watch unfold. You had Galatasaray taking the lead really early on in this game. Really good finish by Yunus Akgün. I thought like just cutting in there, low shot across goal, brilliant one. I thought, well, the way Galatasaray are playing, they might get this win. They've had a really eventful, ambitious summer transfer window in their own regard too. They didn't have Victor Osimhen available in this game though, so they weren't at full strength. But they did have Ilkay Gundogan, took a sensationally well taken free kick. Not the type of one that you would take where you're aiming for the goal. Played it out to Yilmaz that was just waiting out on the wing, completely unmarked. Brilliant chance for Yilmaz to just make it 2-0. It was through on goal, but he fluffed it. He sent it into Rosie, and that was a sensational chance for Galatasaray. And after that, individual mistakes just kept costing him, and it cost him the game in the end. You had Doan, a Japan international, just getting the chance to equalize not too late on. It was really clumsy how the ball even fell to him, but actually went in off of former Spurs defender Davinson Sanchez into the net. And yeah, they ended up just getting that chance to now have the equalizer. But then going into the final 10 or 15 minutes of the game, just kept getting goal after goal for Frankfurt. More individual mistakes, like Singo just trying to clear a ball away from goal that was just taken from a free kick, ends up flying into the back of his own net. And then a really sensational goal that was scored by Uzun, actually. The first Champions League goal of his career. I don't know how he got that shot off so well. Probably 9 out of 10 times that shot doesn't even go in. But it was not Galatasaray's day, so anything that was going against them was going against them. That goal put Frankfurt in the lead at the time. Then in the second half, another unlucky Sanchez moment as well, where a shot deflected off of him, went into the goal. I think the goalkeeper easily would have had that had Sanchez not been in the way. And then you had Sara losing the ball in his own box to gift Frankfurt a 5th goal, where the keeper got rounded, put into an empty net. I don't know what Galatasaray were doing in this game, but they need to fix up and get ready from the second game moving onwards, because that was a terrible one. And now just circling back to the Atletico Madrid game, we did have Alexander Isak, his long-awaited Liverpool debut. Finally, the club record signing, the Premier League record signing, appeared for his new club after a really, really drawn-out transfer saga. Let me be the first to tell you that was not pretty to watch unfold, but it was all worth it in the end, according to Alexander Isak, as he gets his move. Finally got a big game to start with as well. That's a really tough one, in my opinion, having to play against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, particularly with it being a game where it's the opening one as well. So there's going to be so many eyes on the fixture as well. It's one with the tastier clashes. So many people watching Alexander Isak. He didn't do anything too impressive. I'm not going to overhype his performance. I thought for a guy who played his first club bit of football for the first time in months, he did his thing. Really sharp in some moments, linking up play. I liked one particular moment where he created this really nice through ball for Florian Wirtz. I felt like they had a pretty decent connection in some moments in the game as well. Florian Wirtz tried to lay that ball for Frimpong. That should have resulted in a goal, but Frimpong just miskicked it. Just about couldn't quite get there in time. And I feel like on another day, maybe Isak could have had an assist in that game, and you say, oh, some G&A for the stat sheet, but really, it was okay. And I feel like the best of him is still to come. I liked enough of what I saw for someone who didn't play the full 90 minutes and didn't have too many minutes of club football in his legs. And now, just lastly, Mourinho to Benfica after 25 years, where he had joined this club for the first time in 2000. Didn't stay long. It was his first managerial appointment of his career. He's not had to wait long to join a new club after being sacked by Fenerbahce this summer. Now, this is coming in the aftermath of Benfica infamously at this point surrendering a 2-goal lead, an early 2-goal lead at home to Karabakh in their opening Champions League game. I don't know how they allowed Karabakh to get back into this game. Benfica, a much more experienced side in this competition than Karabakh. Karabakh won the Europa League last season, but they squandered that 2-0 lead, and Karabakh ended up winning the game 3-2. They got their third goal in the 86th minute of that game. And I'll be honest with you, Bruno Lage, I don't know if it was too harsh to sack him, but the president, a former Milan legend as a player, Rui Costa, he did say, in order to not have the season compromised, they felt like they had to make this change right away. And now they've brought in Jose Mourinho, the most famous Portuguese manager in the history of the game for sure, but also one of the greatest managers of all time. He's not had a great last couple of years at Fenerbahce, in my opinion. I don't feel like he ever really settled into the Turkish league entirely. I don't think he was ever really happy with some of the things he was seeing tactically on the field, the refereeing, all kinds of remarks have come out of him. And now he's finally returned to what will be, in his words and his mind, a big club that means something to him. But a little bit controversial as he does have a huge legacy with Benfica's arch rivals Porto, but we're going to get more into that later on. Now, that's the quickfire recap of the week's chaos. I know actually I took my time with that one, so I wouldn't say it's even a quickfire one, but that was the recap now done. So we're just going to slow it down just some more and really dig into the details, starting with the English clubs in Europe and what we all learned from their performances. So we've hit all of those headlines now. Let's peel back the layers and go deeper, as there's plenty to unpack this week. And now we're just going to start looking at, well, probably the biggest talking points amongst the Premier League clubs in Europe. I feel like, they have the most participants in the competition this year, with the top 5 managing to qualify directly into the Champions League after earning a spot with the performances of most of the English teams across the Champions League and the Europa League and also the Conference League as well last season. No English club made it to the final, and to be fair, no English club other than Spurs managed to win a European trophy. Whoa, sorry. Okay, that just sounds ridiculous. I know Chelsea did win the Conference League as well. For some reason, I'm still stuck in that 1-0 phase when Real Betis were winning that game. But yes, Chelsea did win, Spurs did win Europa League, and Arsenal did make it to a Champions League semi-final last season. They were the furthest of any English club in the Champions League. So yes, I just have to look at it. Only Newcastle United and Chelsea didn't win, but I would argue they faced the toughest teams of the English team so far this week. And if I'm really being honest, of the 5 teams to play a Champions League game, nobody really played an easy opponent. I know it's Champions League football, there's never really an easy game. But Athletic Bilbao, a respected team in Spain, I think at worst, that's probably the worst possible team that an English team did face this week. Liverpool facing Atletico. We all know Diego Simeone does not make it easy for anybody to beat his teams with the way he sets up defensively. Bayern Munich, Barcelona, they're probably amongst the favourites to even win the Champions League. So I don't even blame Chelsea losing away from home. And I don't really blame Newcastle United not being able to shut out Barcelona, even hosting the game anyway. So really and truly difficult ones. And then, of course, Manchester City playing the team that are the reigning Italian champions and who did get stronger in the summer as well. So now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just wondering, is England really still the dominant force of recent Champions League history? I don't feel like we've got the most teams consistently getting to the finals or winning. But in the last 10 years, if you really look at it, it's the only country with up to 3 different clubs from the country to go on and win the Champions League. So you've got Liverpool that won it in 2019, Chelsea winning it in 2021, Manchester City winning it in 2023. Manchester City were the last team to even get to a final from England as well. So if you look at it in the last several years alone, you've got 3 English teams that managed to win it. In Spain, you've got Real Madrid winning it multiple times within that time span as well. You've got Bayern Munich winning it in 2020. PSG just most recently won it, the first French team in nearly 3 decades. Yeah, just almost in and around 3 decades to win the Champions League. Marseille were the only other team ever out of France to win the Champions League. So I'm just looking at it. Barcelona, 10 years ago now, they won their last Champions League title. Borussia Dortmund did make it to final just last year, but in that moment, they didn't really have anything to compete with Real Madrid. They just kept missing chances, and Real Madrid ended up getting into the game later on. So for me, I feel like even though Spanish teams tend to be the ones that do well in Europe, and most of the time, if a Spanish team makes it to the final, they do not lose. And any European competition, you can check it out. Since 2000 onwards, it is extremely rare to see a Spanish side lose unless they're playing a Spanish side themselves. But I would say, probably just humbly, I don't expect any English team to be the outright favourite for the Champions League this season. I think with Liverpool's transfer window, even with Arsenal's transfer window as well, both clubs have been really ambitious and both clubs did spend a lot of money. Liverpool did spend more, but I think they'll be amongst the teams that people will be thinking and fancying to win it. But to me, Barcelona and PSG are still the outright best teams in the world. You still got Chelsea, who are the World Cup winners as well. But I think as we saw in the game against Bayern Munich, there is something a little bit lacking from this team. And I don't think they're going to have an easy, fun ride getting into the next round of the Champions League. But I think they will. I just don't know what they're going to do past the quarterfinal stage if Chelsea were to get there. But moving on now, which of the teams are most likely to go all the way? Arsenal went the furthest last season, as I've just mentioned. But will they manage to do better than what they did last season and in 2009 and get to a final? They've only gone one time ever in their history. And I think with Champions League, no matter what the caliber of a current team is, I do think things like history, things like the romance and the narratives of Champions League, of those European nights, some of these things always go in the favor of certain teams. I think none more so than the likes of a Real Madrid. But we've seen it in recent years go in the favor of a Barcelona, overturning big ties, getting some remontadas themselves. You know, we've seen it happen for Liverpool a number of times, getting these big ties swing in their favor. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they have. Seen it for Bayern Munich as well. But for other teams in recent times, even Inter Milan, you know, three-time winners in their history as well. Recent seasons, we've seen them do their fair share of stealing it at the death, as we did see last season in the semi-final versus Barcelona, a 7-6 aggregate game, which just kept going back and forth. So with Arsenal, I bring this up because I don't think Arsenal have that European pedigree. They've never won a European trophy other than the Cup Winners' Cup, you know, back in the 20th century. But to be honest, I'm not really one of the people who counts that as a major trophy. So to me, Arsenal need some of that. And I suppose the best time to start is right now. They're going to have to make some of that this season, something that can help them maybe in future tournaments. And the best way to do that is, no matter what, just get through every opponent possible and win. But I don't think they'll be amongst the favourites this time around. I think Manchester City go the furthest just because they won it a couple of seasons ago and they still have the bulk of that team that won it. They still have the same manager. And with the signings that they've made in recent seasons, I don't think they look as strong as they did 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But to be honest, they should go far. They should go really far in this competition. I think with Liverpool, this current team, they did make the final in 2022, which was just a year before Manchester City last made the final. But I feel like a lot of the team that was in that squad has already moved on. You've still got a number of them that were fringe players that will still grow into the team. But in terms of guys that would normally start, you've only really got Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Alisson, and Andrew Robertson, who's fighting for his own left-back spot as well. So I'll be honest, it's going to be a really tough one for Liverpool. They just have a little bit less of the premium Champions League experience. But to be honest, 4 players in your starting 11 that have played in a few Champions League finals each, yeah, they should be fine. So they should be up there with Manchester City. But outside of that, I don't see any English team also going the distance, if I'm being honest with you. Now, just now going deeper into this brilliant game between Juventus and Borussia Dortmund. I don't quite know how this hasn't gotten even more of the spotlight this season, but probably the biggest clash of the day. I think, you know, UEFA spaced out the big European heavyweight clashes quite well this week. I'm not really a big fan of the timing of some of the games. I feel like some of the bigger games could have been slightly earlier on in the day, you know, like the 5:45 UK time kickoffs. But, you know, maybe that's just a small gripe we can get into another day. But I think for this one, it was a brilliant game because it's a game where you can already look at it as an instant UCL classic group phase game. You know, this format has only just been debuted from last season, so we don't have too many amazing, incredible games that we talked about for years and years in this current format. So this is one of the ones where it could have that future law because it was just a game full of absolute crazy, brilliant finishes. And even just outside of that, you can look at the history of this fixture as well, just in case some of you didn't know. Both Juventus and Borussia Dortmund faced each other in the 1997 Champions League final. This was a period of time where Juventus were in the sort of mid to late 90s. They were looking like the best team in Europe. They'd been getting to European finals. The year before, they managed to beat Ajax in the 96 final. So by the time they got to the 97 final, it was back-to-back, and they were the reigning holders. But they were facing a Borussia Dortmund side that did not have that European pedigree. Just circling back to what I said about Arsenal not too long ago. Borussia Dortmund had to make that European pedigree. And to be fair to them, they've made it to a couple more Champions League finals since 97. But that first final for them, they managed to be the underdogs and win the game 1-0. And yeah, you know, Juventus and Borussia Dortmund, they have some history. Maybe not everybody in Europe knows it, but they definitely do have some history. And there's a bit of bitterness between the clubs there. And Juventus have been to more Champions League finals since they've been to about 4 additional finals. but they've just been losing. They have just been losing. They actually made it to another final the year after that one, and they lost to Real Madrid in that final as well. Some heartbreak for the likes of Alessandro Del Piero and other Juventus legends of that era as well. A few years later, they lose to their arch nemesis in AC Milan in the early 2000s as well in a final. They made it to a couple finals in 3 years, losing to Barcelona in 2015, then again losing to Real Madrid in 2017. So this is a team that has been experiencing so much heartbreak, and it's all stemmed all the way back from that 1997 final against Borussia Dortmund. Now, I would now ask the question, do fans now prefer chaotic, high-scoring matches over tactical chess matches? It's really hard to say, because that's one of the best aspects of Champions League football, in my opinion. You get these games where you don't know how a team that is typically like the likes of a Juventus, they come from a league where defensive discipline is the first and foremost aspect that's always mentioned, when we're talking about football in Italy. But Juventus, in this game, defensively, they did not have much to be offering, especially in a game where they're at home. I just feel like Borussia Dortmund were able to cut them up so many times. And it was really brilliant individual pieces of individual play from the likes of Kenan Yildiz and Dusan Vlahovic, who actually bailed them out of the game. And Juventus, they had a really torrid time in Champions League games in recent years, in my opinion. I don't really rate the strength of the team that they're going to do anything particularly impressive in Europe. They might challenge for the Scudetto this season, but I don't really think they're going to do too much there. Now, we've got lastly Jose Mourinho returning to Benfica. I wish I could tell you just how much I want to get into this topic, because Jose Mourinho going back to Benfica is such an interesting story in the football community. We've got this man who is the biggest managerial story of the week by far, because it's Jose Mourinho. He's one of the greatest managers we've seen, not just in the 21st century, but just in the history of the game. The amount of trophies, the amount of iconic moments, the press conference quotes. This is a man who, wherever he goes, it seems like the drama follows, but if nothing else, the entertainment follows on and off the pitch. More so off the pitch than on the pitch, unfortunately. His style of football, I do wonder how well it's going to do in Portugal. You could say Portugal is a place where he could have got some of his philosophies on football, but famously, he was an interpreter for the late, great Mr. Robson, one of the greatest English managers in the last 50 or so years. And he got a lot of his own influences from him as well as a manager. But we've seen in these recent years, his defense-first approach has not led to all the biggest trophies. Even though he did win the Conference League with Roma just a few years ago, did manage to get to Europa League final again the next year. Had the opportunity to do similarly what he did with Porto, winning 2 different European competitions back-to-back, but they didn't win that one, Roma. And I do have to say, what does this now mean as a full circle moment? He comes in to replace Bruno Lage. I think he's probably the best manager available on the market who looks like they're actually interested in going back to managing. People talk about where the likes of like a Jurgen Klopp or something is going to return to management. I don't see that coming anytime soon. So I think for Benfica, looking at what they would have been able to afford salary-wise as well with managers, they got the best option. I'm not against Benfica choosing Jose Mourinho. And of course, the greatest Portuguese manager of all time by a distance. But this being a full circle moment, I did want to dive into as well. Mourinho's very first job was this Benfica managerial job in 2000. But let's be honest, he's not necessarily a legend in that part of Portugal. He's a legend in Porto, one of the biggest sort of iconic figures of Porto's history. He came in, didn't manage them for a great amount of time, didn't have the biggest budget in the world, but the likes of Ricardo Carvalho, Deco, you had so many awesome players. I know the captain of his side just recently tragically passed away in recent weeks, and he just had so many amazing players in that team as well. I think, just an interesting tidbit as well, former Nottingham Forest manager Nuno Espirito Santos was a goalkeeper in that Porto squad managed by Jose Mourinho that won the Champions League in 2004 as well. He had a bunch of players that got discovered under him in his team. And yeah, I just think it's unfortunate where you now have this aspect in this rivalry between Benfica and Porto, where arguably one of, if not the greatest manager in Porto's history, has now gone to the arch rivals, a place where he doesn't have that huge affinity to the club, other than the fact that it was his first managerial job that kickstarted his career. So I do wonder what Jose Mourinho's intentions are. Probably didn't want to wait much longer for his next managerial job, in my opinion. So that's probably why, okay, he gets the opportunity to return to the Portuguese league, a league that he still does know well, despite not coaching in it in the last 2 decades, near enough. But what does his legacy now mean at the arch rivals Porto? Do they now start feeling a type of way of Jose Mourinho joining the arch nemesis? You could point to Jose Mourinho returning to Italian football after a huge legacy that he created in just a couple of years at Inter Milan. But with Roma, even though there's a bit of a history between the clubs, they're not direct rivals in the way that Inter Milan are with a Juventus or AC Milan, or the way that Roma is with Lazio. With Porto and Benfica, this is a huge rivalry, probably one of the bigger rivalries that you'll find in European football. So I know Porto fans are sick to their stomach that Jose Mourinho would take this job. I don't think it should affect his legacy. You know, the likelihood of us seeing again in this lifetime a manager that can take a team to win the UEFA Cup, or as now has been rebranded to the Europa League, to then win the Champions League the very next season, I don't think we're going to be able to see that again. We've seen managers go relatively close in terms of winning Europas and Champions Leagues. You know, we've seen like Diego Simeone win Europa Leagues with Atletico not too long after, getting them in the Champions League, getting them to a final. They didn't win that one. We've seen Chelsea go reverse in a similar early 2010s, winning the Champions League, then the next year dropping from the group stage to then win the Europa League. And then even again, Chelsea did do it quite similarly again, I think in 2019, winning the Europa League, then 2 years later winning the Champions League. But even then, different managers at that point. It's very rare that the same manager manages to do that. So I think what he did with Porto was incredible, and it should always be remembered in my view. But with Benfica now, just looking forward, what are they going to be able to do with Jose Mourinho? They won the first 3 games of the Liga Portugal season in a row, then they just drew their most recent game. So currently, they're in 4th place in Liga Portugal. I don't think there's too much damage that's been done there. Respectively, they've not lost a league game so far this season. So Jose Mourinho isn't necessarily arriving into this catastrophic situation. But with Bruno Lage's abrupt sacking like that, it definitely looks like Porto want to go in a different view. With Jose Mourinho, what his tactics will always almost guarantee you is some sort of defensive solidity. I think he's got a decent enough squad that he can do something with that team. And I don't think he's a man who's forgotten to win trophies. He's only not managed to win a trophy at now Fenerbahce and Spurs in his career. Everywhere else, trophies have followed. But with the next games in the Champions League looking to be a return to Stamford Bridge against Chelsea for Jose Mourinho, that'll be his first Champions League game with Benfica. But then after that, they then have to play against Newcastle, then Bayer Leverkusen, then they're playing Ajax, then they're playing Napoli, then they're playing Juventus, and then lastly, they have to host Real Madrid in January. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I don't see any of these games that Benfica are going to win. I know just based off how odds can be, I don't see Benfica losing every single one of these games. But if I'm being honest, every single one of these teams are better than Benfica, and these are some of the best possible teams that Benfica could be facing. So Karabag had to be the one that they won, and they've lost. And if you're losing at home to Karabag, I can't give you much of a chance against some of these teams. So I do think Jose Mourinho is going to have a huge task on his hands to be able to get Benfica to the next round of the Champions League. But let's see how it goes. Jose Mourinho, if nothing else, he brings experience, he brings that fire. He's a great motivator if you buy into his philosophy and into the way that he wants to play the game. So we're just going to have to see. We are just going to have to see. Moving on from this, that's my take on the week's biggest games and talking points and stories. But I do want to hear from you. I'm going to take this opportunity again to say, please get in the comment section and tell me your takes. I've been asking for these in the first couple of episodes, but I've not really been getting so many takes from people. I want to be able to feature them onto the next podcast episodes I do. I want to hear, what do you guys make of all of this? These were my thoughts. Now it's time to throw it over to you. Let's open up to the big talking points of the days, really. So which English club has impressed you the most in Europe so far this week? That's what I want you guys to be discussing amongst yourselves. Please share this podcast episode as well with other people if you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think was the best game in the Champions League this week. I've already told you, I think Juventus versus Borussia Dortmund, this 4-4 absolute giant clash between these two teams. 8 goals in the second half. You'll be hard pressed to find another game quite like that. Or did you like the Eintracht Frankfurt Galatasaray game where there were so many strange individual mistakes in just one game from one club? It was just a weird game to watch unfold. Or did you like the dramatic Real Madrid victory, scoring later on against Marseille? or even the late victory that happened with Liverpool against Atletico Madrid. Please let me know your opinions in this one as well. And, have I just been totally disrespectful and just remembered Spurs played in the Champions League this week as well. 6 clubs have been in the Champions League this season. I'm just going to say it straight away, guys. That was an honest mistake from me. I know Spurs fans are going to be furious with me. I know quite a bunch of you will be really, really annoyed. But Spurs did win earlier in the Champions League this week, 1-0. Lucas Bergvall just managing to force an own goal in that game as well. And I'll be honest with you, yikes. Honestly, that was probably the most boring game of the whole lot to watch unfold. I genuinely had forgotten about that game. And I'm so sorry towards the Spurs fans that I'm just mentioning you so briefly now, just towards the end. But please let me know which English team did the business. I think the Spurs, you have to give them credit as Europa League holders. Clean sheet, won their game at home. Wasn't a very convincing display, but they did what had to be done. Lucas Bergvall, by the way, looking very, very promising. I loved the contribution he had for his first Premier League goal against West Ham on the weekend, now getting involved, helping Spurs win. He's someone who I think has a very good case to be a consistent starter for Spurs in the future of the season. Now, please let me know as well, where do you think Jose Mourinho is going to be able to take Benfica? What is your take on this homecoming? Is it a homecoming if it's a place where you haven't really got an existing legacy, or does it still count as it was the club where Jose Mourinho started off his managerial career? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And even bigger than what I just said, is it a betrayal to Porto? To me, I'm not even Portuguese. I don't know too many fans of Porto, but I just can't quite get over it. I know if it was me and it was a manager who meant so much to me, and I've seen, maybe give me the best footballing memories of my career, because to me, Porto have not done anything significant in the Champions League since 2004 when they won it. And obviously, Jose Mourinho left straight away after that. He's not returned to Porto since. He hasn't even returned to Portuguese football since he left 2004 to take the managerial job at Chelsea. So for him to finally come back to Portugal, I'm sure some Porto fans were even hoping that day would come where he would be the one to return to Porto. Has that bridge now been burned? Is there ever any possibility, depending on how things go with Benfica, that he could possibly take the Porto job someday? Please let me know your thoughts there. I don't see how that's going to happen, but I would hope that Porto fans are, a bit forgiving to Jose Mourinho, but it's very hard to watch or imagine how that's going to unfold. And just lastly, please, listeners, let me know, is Alexander Isak the missing piece at Liverpool? I've already done a bunch of clips talking about, is Gehi the player that was probably, had he signed, was Liverpool going to be a shoo-in for the Premier League title? I think so. Please let me know your thoughts and opinions of that in the comment section as well. But I do think Alexander Isak, regardless of Gehi signing, I think Isak puts Liverpool as the favourites to win the Premier League. I do. I think he's such a brilliant striker, and regardless of what you may think from his debut, I think the best of him is yet to come, and he's going to give Liverpool a dimension that I think the chances that the likes of Mo Salah will make, what I think Florian Wirtz is going to be able to do when he really starts getting going and clicking in this team. I think Isak is going to be eating goals galore this season. But please let me know, is Isak the real deal? Is he getting overhyped or underhyped, in your opinion, from just this first game that he's played for Liverpool? Please just let me know your thoughts. I would love to know. And that's the discussion side done. Before we wrap up, let's just recap the biggest headlines from this week and close out and look at what's going to happen next week as well. We've covered the Champions League chaos. We've had so many amazing games this week. We've had Alexander Isak making his debut with Liverpool as well, not making a huge contribution just yet. But like I said, the best is probably still to come. Jose Mourinho returning to Benfica. Absolutely insane. Out of nowhere. Quick appointment from Benfica. Just a few days after Bruno Lage gets sacked. Where does this leave Benfica moving forward? And of course, one of the most dramatic games in recent times, Juventus for Borussia Dortmund 4. That was a really lovely game to watch. I'm hoping so many more games like that will be coming up. I want to see high-scoring games. I want to be seeing games where, even if the football in between isn't slick, I just want, as soon as the chances are through on goal, I'm a simple guy. I just love seeing beautifully well-taken goals, or long-range screamers, or solo individual ones like we got to see with the Jeremy Doku effort against Napoli. I'm a huge fan of all of that. So please, viewers, please hit that like button. Please. It's free. It won't hurt. I beg you, please. If you liked what you saw and if you managed to make it all the way to the end, I am really grateful that you did. Please just reward me slightly, a little bit more with the like button being hit. Please hit the share button as well. Share it on any platform that you're watching or listening to this on. And subscribe if you haven't. If you're new here, please check out my other content as well. I do a lot of clips on YouTube Shorts and TikTok as well. I've even got some clips that I upload on Facebook as well, but predominantly Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok if you are unfamiliar with my content. And make sure you hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss episode 4 of this podcast as well. Let me know your comments. Please let me know your comments in the comment section. I'm hoping to see a few of you. Just let me know anything that you think about this or even where you think I might improve. I'm definitely open to suggestions and I'm very appreciative of all the support I've been getting. So that's all for episode 3 of the Wales Football Onslaught podcast. We've had it all this week. Just recapping once again, English clubs battling it out in Europe. A Champions League classic in Juventus versus Dortmund. Alexander Isak's Liverpool debut and Jose Mourinho's dramatic Benfica homecoming. Make sure to drop your opinions in the comments and make sure you don't miss episode 4 by hitting that notification button. And yeah, just join me next time for the next time we get a recording in and we'll upload episode 4. We'll be looking at what's happened in the Premier League and beyond since. Hopefully there'll be more Champions League football that would have been played by the next time I'll be recording and uploading episode 4. And if there's any more European drama or managerial sackings or records being broken or injury concerns that happen in between, we'll be assessing that too. But we should be uploading another one just before the international break. But we'll wait to see how that goes. And also drop a comment of your own hot take. It could be anything that I didn't even cover in this video, by the way. Just, I'd like to encourage some discourse and get some takes from fellow football fans as well. And share this with a fellow football fan who's not familiar with my content. Anyone who was a big fan or has a big opinion on the things that I've spoken about in this episode, share with them, get their takes. I'm very keen to find out what you have to say in the comments as well. And until then, I've been Will. I'm very grateful for everyone that's taken the time to stay this long and watch the end of the video. Make sure to keep your boots laced, your opinions sharp, and I'll see you next time.